Frank Lindsay has been bee mad since he was a boy. Over the past 50 years, as both a commercial and hobbyist beekeeper, he's learned just about everything there is to making honey and keeping bees. I braved my fear of the bees to go and learn more about their secret lives. Late autumn is a quiet time for bees, and a chance for beekeepers to catch up on maintenance, like building new frames or checking the health of their hives. Frank Lindsay has loved bees since he was a boy and has over 50 years' experience tending to the six-legged winged insects.
I started as about an 8-year-old when we visited a honey factory in Havelock North, and I saw the bees and I thought, I want beehives, so I went home and put a pot out of honey out in the garden. And it was autumn, and autumn time is when robbing season's on. And it attracted lots and lots of bees. We lived in Hastings at the time, and my father got stung and my brother got stung as my father tried to cover up this pot and set fire to it. And I was forbidden to have bees until I had my own property. So within 6 months, well, it's October, we moved in February. By October I had my first beehive.
From hundreds of commercial hives across Greater Wellington and Horowhenua, Frank is now focused on helping grow more hobbyist beekeepers. We meet at the Wellington Beekeepers Association hives, tucked into a block of bush on the outskirts of Wellington. We're reading bee boards today. But first, we take a look inside one of the hives.
So they actually glue all the sides and everything so that then you've actually got to break into it, break the proper seal. And that's
Now, why are they making that particular noise?
Oh, because we just lifted the lid. So see this in the air? This got the sting hanging out, stinging up in the air. That's putting an alarm pheromone out. That, hey, the hive's been disturbed. They're now communicating to all the other bees that there's an intruder. And be prepared.
How many bees would you typically say, roughly, would be in a hive this size?
This size, you're looking about 25 to 30,000.
Wow.
These are quite... Because of the season's been going on and on, these two hives here looking good, but I know number 4 will probably be down to about 10 to 15,000. Generally a box of bees is around about 15 to 20,000 bees.
And if a hive is performing, at its peak, how much honey would you expect to get from that?
Well, in Wellington area it's around about 30 kilos per hive, but we've got some of them here that if you look at, it's still... There's 3 boxes of honey on there, and 3 boxes of honey have generally got about 24 Ks if it's really full, 24 Ks in each, so we're looking at 60 K. It depends on how many beekeepers are around. Bees really need, they get their pollen in the spring from trees and everything, and then after the December they start on to pasture growth, so they get a lot of pollen from clovers and other things that are flowering. And so if you're in an area where you've got a bit of bush and a bit of open farmland, the bees do really well. If it's all just straight pasture like dairy farming, the bees, sometimes some beekeepers will have to support them in the spring by adding pollen paddies. But here in Wellington, with all this so much bush that's in gorse flowering, the bees do really well.
Now back to the bee boards, and we're checking for mites.
So they've got slides underneath them, the bottom board, and we every week I photograph the mite fall. So we're up to week 63. So I'm just putting a little bit of vegetable oil on the corflute slide, and then you push it back underneath, and we're doing that for all the hives. So we're doing monitoring, and we put a piece of this to stop the bees getting in underneath, which is bread bag. I did have nice boards and whatnot, so you can see we're looking at the black dots. Wrong glasses on. These are varroa mites, yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So we count them, but I don't count them. I photograph them and then send them to Richard Hill, who's our scientist for MPI, and he uses ApiZoom, which counts them in 20 seconds.
Wow, so using technology to do it for you.
Facial recognition using that. So we put a 20-cent coin on there, and they know that a 27 coin
That's a scale.
is 2.64 centimetres. And then you just take a picture, and that's all there, and then I just send them to him.
How long would it normally take you to do something like that?
Anything in the season when you're getting about 300 or 400 mites, it can take me 10 minutes. So I usually, when it's really bad, I'm here for an hour and a half. So we're looking at that to see whether it happened, because what we find is some of your best production hives have high mites at the end of the summer, and they collapse early. And then when they collapse, and that's what happened here, we had hive at the end collapse, and that put mites through the whole lot. And then it takes a long time to get the mite numbers back down again.
So the varroa mites, what is it that they're doing to the bees?
They're an ectoparasite, so they suck the blood of the bees. They do two stages. They suck the blood inside when they're developing larvae, but when they come out, they then get onto nurse bees, which are bigger bees because they're feeding the young bees, and they've got a lot of fat bodies, and they suck the fat bodies out, and that allows these mites to then produce eggs so they can reproduce. Every 14 days it doubles the number. And so it doesn't. And the difference between 1%, which is 3 mites per, or 1 mite per 100 bees, so is it 1%? Yep. And 5%, which is 15 mites, is you only get half the honey crop. Because the bees are trying to get rid of the mites all the time, so they're not concentrating going out and bringing in honey. And then we've got too many, you get viruses happening at the end of the season. And the viruses unstabilise the bees, so they don't thermoregulate properly, and they don't get into a cluster, and the hive generally dies through that.
Varroa mites aren't the only threat to bees, with a disease called American foul brood also devastating hives across the country.
There's a really bad bacterial disease that can get into bees, and it's called American foul brood. And it only takes 10 spores from a 14 or 16-day, 12-hour larva for it to pass on, and it can cripple the hive over 6 months to a year.
AFB can be pretty devastating for beekeepers too, I understand.
Oh yeah. The first time I burnt a hive, which is up in Otaki, and I didn't sleep for 3 days because I burnt my dear little beehive. So it does affect you. You just get a bit hard-nosed after a while. We pay a levy each year, and the levy is so that the management agency can go and check that beekeepers. It's a beekeeper-controlled disease. We're meant to be inspecting our hives, and if we find any, we report it and get rid of it by burning. So you've got to burn the whole hive. It's to some beekeepers who are commercial have the ability to save the boxes by dipping them in paraffin for 10 minutes at 160 degrees, and that will kill the spores. But anything else doesn't really kill them. It takes a long time, and they're long-lived.
The board tells us there's other pests too, like mice which steal the honey from inside the frame, likely without even being stung.
We've had a mouse inside the hive. That's mice poo.
Do they do very well in the hive, or do they get a little bit
They
stung?
get a feed. No, the bees don't like the smell of them, so they move away from them.
While the mice might escape being stung, Frank isn't so lucky. An occupational hazard, he's used to it. Unfortunately for many beekeepers' children of a certain era, like Frank's son, regular exposure to the bee venom has led to serious allergies.
My son is highly allergic to me and to bees.
Because of the exposure
Exposure to the venom that's in the air all the time that we didn't know about. So now we tell beekeepers that you don't put your clothing in with your normal washing, and you don't carry bee stuff in your car, especially if you've got children.
So does your son have to carry, for example, like an EpiPen?
Yeah, adrenaline.
Wow.
Yeah, carries adrenaline.
There's been plenty of other changes during Frank's time, from the rise and fall of the manuka industry.
We have a little bit of manuka scattered around on the tops here. Does it produce a lot of nectar? You get the odd frame of it, but it's mostly bush types.
Not much money in manuka for commercial growers at the moment anyway.
No, the industry's in collapse, and it's going to take another couple of years at least. There's a lot of beekeepers exiting. We had a meeting yesterday and learned another 4 have gone, 4 major ones have gone. And it's just because there's a gold rush, and then everybody jumped on it, and a lot of the families, even the family business, are hurting, and they've dropped their bee numbers to be more sustainable. Well, this year was the first year we started really producing honey, because there's not so many beekeepers around this area anymore, because a lot of the areas in Judgeford and Wainui and whatnot have got a fair amount of manuka, so beekeepers from other regions move into those areas.
You've seen a lot of changes in your time as a beekeeper, and obviously you've stepped away from the commercial side of things. What are some of the big impressions that you've noticed during your 50 years?
Farming practices changed, so I learnt from a beekeeper in Taranaki. Farmers planted hedges, and a lot of the hedges were barberry or boxthorn. And so you got, first of the spring is you got 2 boxes of barberry honey. Then you get 3 boxes when they put up the actual farming for getting hay. they let the paddocks go, and when it was getting cut it and all the rest of it, and baled it up. Well, during that process, of course, the clover's flowering, so they'd get 3 boxes of clover. And at the end of that, boxthorn would flower again, and you'd get winter crop, so you get another box of that. So you're getting quite a lot of honey. It was a big production area. So Canterbury and Taranaki, when I first started, were the big production areas. And now they're the worst because they're deserts, because the thing that happened, of course, is rotational grazing. So instead of clover being prominent in the pasture, the cows go in every couple of weeks and eat it off. So their flowers disappear really quickly. So that happened. And then dairying came along, and every bit of land, because bees require, we're only on farmland at the behest of the farmer. And really what he's getting for that is free pollination of clovers mostly. Again, we're just a Cinderella industry that sits in the background that does a lot of, if you're a kiwi fruit grower, we're really important, or avocado, we're really important. But for farmer, we're just providing a source there of free pollination, which they don't see. If you've got a kiwi fruit, you see all the seeds, because you've got to have 2,000 seeds to get an export size. And every clover seed has 6, if they've been pollinated properly, 6 seeds in it. But you've got to look really small to see those tiny seeds, and so they don't see the benefit of what bees do.
The world of bees holds a lifetime of secrets, and Frank knows most of them all.
It's a great hobby, and nobody comes and visits you when you're working your bees for some reason. And you've actually, if you've got a job and it's a bit stressful, you go down the bees and you can't think about your job, because if you're not paying attention to them, they soon let you know by stinging your fingers if you put them in the wrong place. So your mind is totally relaxed, because working in beehives, you've actually got to be really relaxed. They pick up on you give off a pheromone when you're actually stressed or a bit nervous or anything like that. So we teach beekeepers to walk in, count 10 backwards, and just relax as you go down. And once you're relaxed, you can work the bees quite easily.
That was Frank Lindsay I was speaking to. Frank is a life member of several bee clubs, including the Wellington Beekeepers Association. Earlier this year, he was made an Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit for his services to apiculture.